exactly that. It's the brand. So you're spending all this time doing work for all these brands, and you're like, wait a minute. In a way, you're your own brand. Like, you can create your own stuff. And God, I forget who said it now. I should look it up. We're sitting here, but the best thing I've ever heard by kind of a famous poet person said, the best advice you can give to any young person was build your name. And I thought that was kind of like we would give advice to a brand. Like, you have to build your brand. You have to build it, and you got to do it from the ground up. You can't. There's no shortcut. You can't just all of a sudden go, hey, look, I'm famous and I have this thing now. It doesn't work that way. You have to just slowly, piece by piece by piece, build your whatever that brand is. And again, I think coming from advertising, I was very aware of that. I was very aware of the process and how we would advise clients. I thought, well, you should just do this for yourself.
Welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, avid book reader, and developing salsa dancer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who've gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience Podcast.
Welcome to episode 33 of the Amani Experience Podcast. For this show, we have Rohitash Rao coming to us. Rohitash is an artist. He's a music video producer and award-winning children's author. He's done some dope work all across the world, so it's very inspiring to talk to him. I really love how he talks about his patience in terms of doing art, and it might not pop off until 7-10 years from now. And then he shares some great stories from when his mom allowed him to finally go to art school, to just kind of growing up, how he views Venice, living in Venice in terms of his artwork. So I think you're really going to enjoy the show. I find it quite inspiring. Let me get to a review real quick. We have a review from International P. It says, wonderful podcast. Amani does an amazing job interviewing the guests. I love the books each guest recommend. So feel free to leave us a review and a rating on iTunes. We could read it on air as well. Thank you for listening. Let's get to the show. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to read our guest bio today, and then we will get right to talking to him. Our guest today has been drawing since he could hold a pencil and used to draw on everything and anything he could find. He graduated with a BFA with honors from the Art Center College of Design in 1991 and started his career in advertising. He spent many years as an art director creating award-winning ads for brands like Taco Bell, Little Caesars Pizza, Staples, Toyota, Energizer, and PlayStation. His work garnered prestige from The One Show, D&AD, the Clios, Cannes Communication Arts, and the AICP. I would like to welcome Rohitash Rao to the Amani Experience Podcast. Welcome.
Hi, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for being on the show. We're excited to have you. We always do a geographic check-in, so let us know, where are we right now in this glorious place?
Currently in the glorious area of Venice, California.
Yes.
Which is now called Silicon Beach, which is a term I've actually never said out loud until just now.
All right. And where did you grow up? Where are you from?
I was born in India, in Hyderabad, and moved to Rancho Cucamonga, basically, after that. I mean, well, that's where I grew up, is Rancho Cucamonga, California.
Okay.
And so that's really I think when people say where are you from, I would say almost that more than I would say India, because India, it was, I left when I was about 1.5. So
right.
I don't know if that counts.
Okay. We'll count that a little bit. What was it like growing up in Rancho Cucamonga?
It was awesome. It was awesome because it was... you've seen E.T., right?
Yes.
So that neighborhood that they show in E.T., like they're all on the bikes, that was my childhood. That was exactly it. And Rancho Cucamonga is not very far from Mount Baldy.
Okay.
And so Mount Baldy was kind of much like E.T., that was our mountain that we could go up to and ride our bikes. And eventually when we were the age of drinking, we could go and hide beer under trees and rocks, and we'd go up there. We always knew where we could find each other and meet. But most of my childhood, junior high school, early high school, was spent on a BMX bike roaming the streets of Cucamonga.
Nice. Now, how would you summarize yourself? If I gave you 30 seconds and said, give me a summary of Ro, how would you summarize yourself?
He doesn't sleep. I would say, in general, I think I've always just been a person who's constantly inspired / wanting to make something with that inspiration. And that's also why I don't sleep. But that's basically, I think that I'm constantly excited about something new. And I have no idea what I'm going to make next. And that really excites me, but it also scares me sometimes because I have a hard time turning it off.
Okay. And then once you finished high school, initially you went up to school in San Jose. Talk to us about that and how you ended up at the Art Center College of Design.
I come from a very, very creative family. I would say a very artistic family, but nobody in my family really pursued it. And this, what I'm about to say, is kind of a made-up version of my mom, but I think it works. My mom would say, basically, you have a hobby and you have a jobby, and those were two separate things in her mind. And she would come home from work. A lot of people in my family would be artistic on their off hours, but they didn't really pursue it as a job, and it never made sense to me. So when I was a kid, that's how I thought. I thought you go get a job, and then you go and do whatever you want to do on the side. So I got into a chemistry program at San Jose State University, and there was a teacher, a TA, a teacher's aide in the class who pulled me aside one day, and he said, "You are horrible. You are by far the worst student I've ever seen in this class. Why are you here? Do you want to go into medicine?" I said, "No." "You want to go into science?" "No." Do you want to go into anything that has to do with this class?" And I said, "No." He said, "Get out. I'm saving you your entire future. Get out of this class. Go do whatever that is you want to do." And I called my mom and I go, can I go to an art school, please? And she goes, "I don't know if there's any art schools really that are good." And she did some research, and to her credit, she found Art Center. And Art Center was the one school that the reason why she was okay with it was because they had a 98% employment
rate, whatever.
Yeah, graduates who were getting jobs. So that made her very happy, and that was I think the reason why she was okay with it.
Okay, and then from there you graduated school, and you've had a storied career where you've worked for like Sci-Fi Channel, music video director, author. Like, what are some of the highlights so far in your career that when you look back on, you just kind of smile and say, I'm so happy that I went through there, I did that?
I think it's funny. I think I've been writing stories since I was very young, and I think the thing that no one tells you about writing ideas is that it takes its own damn time to become something. So everything that I've created, I would say, took between 5 and 10 years by the time I was talking about it or creating it, by the time it was actually manifested into whatever art form it was going to be. And so I think, in general, that's the proudest thing that I would say I'm pleased with that I've done, that I just stuck with it. And I just, persevered with these stories and these ideas. It's so easy to get discouraged. You write something, you show it to people, maybe a network, maybe a publisher, whoever you're trying to get it to, and they don't want it. They don't like it. They don't think it's good for them. And then you can easily go, well, I guess I tried, and I'll go back to my life and my job, and I'll just give up. But somehow I had enough people around me, and I'm sure that was what kept me going, in that fire inside of me that said, no, just keep at it. Don't stop. And the beauty is, once you write one thing, you think, well, okay, that didn't work. I'll just do it again. You write something else, and that doesn't work. I'll do it again. And then weirdly, by the time you're on your 10th thing, someone's like, hey, that one thing you wrote like 10 years ago, I want to talk about that. And then you're so much better now because you've written 10 things, so you can go back to that first thing and make it even stronger and tighter. And that's kind of, I think, in a lot of ways, my whole career. But I kept moving on to the next thing, and somebody wanted, something I did a long time ago.
Okay. You touched on a couple of things I really want to kind of delve into a little more. What do you think is important, or how do you manage to grow your patience and perseverance? Because that's a really difficult trait for people to be. Like, people are not very patient, especially nowadays. How have you been able to stay patient and persevere through the ups and downs?
I don't know if it's from my family or upbringing or what, but I think everybody around me, friends and family, I think are very craft-oriented people, in the sense where, like, the idea, honestly, is only like, I think, a very small percentage of, I think, what makes something happen. The idea is a great spark, but really it's the sitting down in the chair and, holding the pencil, the pen, the laptop, whatever you have in front of you, and just doing the work, the craft, just doing the work. And I think that part I've never had a problem with. And the best lesson of that is when I started filmmaking, I started out like most people who were writing commercials for a long time. You start doing live action work. You start getting into live action commercials, working with actors and all that. And nobody would hire me. I wasn't getting any work. And people would say to me, your stuff is just too weird for, I think, maybe live action. Maybe you should start considering drawing your work, going into animation. And suddenly I got into stop motion specifically because I like the idea of building like craft, like building, dolls, building sets, building miniatures. And what stop motion teaches you is the patience, because you're spending, it's 24 frames a second, right? You're shooting 2 frames for every movement of this doll for 1 second. And that's a lot of work. It may take you an hour for 1 second. I mean, there's no better lesson of patience than that. And I think that's honestly, like, from that on, I can do anything because stop motion teaches you just to sit there.
Right. Wow. Okay, stop motion. We'll keep that in mind. Now, you've worked with a lot of brands. You worked with a lot of advertising. When was it that you decided to say, you know what, I'm going to kind of do my own thing? Because the theme of the show is that people have used to work for corporate America and have gone and done their own creative venture on their own. When was that point in time when you said, I'm going to go out and go on my own and kind of do that?
Well, it's exactly that. It's the brand. So you're spending all this time doing work for all these brands, and you're like, wait a minute. In a way, you're your own brand. Like, you can create your own stuff. And I forget who said it now. I should look it up that we're sitting here. But the best thing I've ever heard by, kind of a famous poet person said, the best advice you can give to any young person was build your name. And I thought that was kind of like we would give advice to a brand. Like, you have to build your brand. You have to build it. And you got to do it from the ground up. You can't, there's no shortcut. You can't just all of a sudden go, hey, look, I'm famous and I have this thing now. It doesn't work that way. You have to just slowly, piece by piece by piece, build your whatever that brand is. And again, I think coming from advertising, I was very aware of that. I was very aware of the process and, how we would advise clients. I thought, well, you should just do this for yourself.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say you started building your brand back in maybe elementary school, junior high school, when you first started drawing. I know that you first started painting on trash in junior high school. What inspired you to start that? That's extremely unique. Because
I think my family wasn't exactly supportive of a artistic life. So I just make art wherever I could find it, and that happened to be in the garage, where I could just like grab a piece of wood or grab something my parents threw away, a cardboard box or whatever, and I would just paint on it because I had to paint. I didn't realize the magnet that had on me even then, but I think I realize it now. But so I just had to paint, and whatever was in front of me, I would just find. And and even materials, like there was times when I would just make paintings out of whiteout because it's all we had in the house. We had a piece of wood and whiteout, and maybe a Sharpie. All right, I'll just work with this, and I'll make stuff. And I think it just got me into the habit of you have no excuse. There's no reason why you can't make something right now.
Agreed. Talk to us about, I think this is while you were in New York, when it was the blog that was called Art for a Beer.
Yeah.
When you're in New York. Can I talk to us about that?
Yeah, well, so, coming from advertising and having a lot of friends who are, a lot of people in advertising are extremely, extremely talented, creative people who happen to be in advertising, but they have other passions and other things they want to do. So I had a very hard time trying to sell my work to my friends. So I'm like, what can I do to get my friends to buy it, but not make it feel like I'm, pushing my art on these guys? And I thought, I'll make it fun. What if you just bought me a beer for this piece? And it was almost a way to kind of soften the blow of having them hand over, some money. And I didn't plan this, but what ended up happening was I would have these bar nights where I would go to a bar and I'd bring like a cigar box full of, trash paintings. And I just go put it in the middle of the table, have a bunch of friends show up. I'm like, whatever you want, buy me a beer, it's yours. And then after like the seventh person would buy me a beer, they're like, you can't drink anymore. So then they would just go, we want this painting, but here's $20 or here's, whatever. And then suddenly people were just giving me money. And I'm like, okay, well now it's acceptable. Now it's okay for them to actually hand over, some cash for a painting. And it broke that like kind of that line of, I'm actually buying your art as opposed to just buying you a beer and you're giving me art. So that's what kind of in a way crossed over from that to I think trying to really sell it.
Nice. Now, as you think back on your career, in your opinion, what's the most unique surface, piece of equipment, trash that you've used to create a piece of art?
That's a good question. It's funny. I by painting on trash, you learn very quickly how things are made. Like, for example, there's certain fast food cups that are coated in like a plastic. And when you paint on it, the paint doesn't really adhere because there's a plastic layer over that that supposedly looking paper cup. Whereas other cups are actually cardboard or paper, and and they'll say it like pure 100% recycled or whatever. So I think that I've been very aware of who recycles and who doesn't, like who uses recycled paper and who doesn't. Being near Abbot Kinney here in Venice, there's pretty much every shop on the street recycles or uses recycled paper, cardboard for their coffee cups and containers. And that's really where I've been painting most of my trash paintings on, because I knew that it would not only be environmentally conscious, but actually it takes the paint the best.
Cool. All right. And I know that there's a reason why you chose Venice to kind of set up shop and to do a lot of your artwork and have your studio here. Maybe explain to us your thought process for that.
Mainly the light. I mean, I worked in Venice in the mid-90s at a bunch of these agencies, like you mentioned, that where I worked on PlayStation and Energizer and all those places. So I spent a lot of time in Venice, and I remember even then just, I don't know, this area just seems to have a magic to it. I mean, there's, even if it's rainy here, it's still amazing and gorgeous. And the studio that I'm in has this, giant rolling up gate thing and the skylights and the light in the air is just magnificent, especially in the summer. I can just keep everything open and just have that, beautiful summer breeze come through here. And I didn't realize how much that made a difference when it came to sitting in a place and working all day. I tried doing this in my East Village apartment, and I wasn't getting as much done. And I think it's, if you're gonna spend a lot of your time making stuff, especially on with paints and spray paint like I do, you better find a place that is conducive to that kind of work.
Yeah, and this studio is beautiful. You can't tell from the outside, but once you get inside here, you can just feel the creativity oozing out of it. So impressive. Well done here. Thank you. Nice. In your opinion, what is important for creative professionals such as yourself, myself? What's important for us to succeed in today's business environment?
And this comes from advertising, because I think this is the best lesson I got from it, which is, I'll just say this. For advertising, the two things that come out that you learn very quickly is you learn how to concept and you learn how to pitch. And I think those are two important things, and they're two very different things. And I think whatever your idea is, whatever you want to put out in the world, you're going to have to at some point be able to write out what that is. And it could be a movie, a book, a podcast, whatever this thing is. You're going to have to write out what your idea is, what your point of view is. And that takes a bit of skill to be able to cohesively sum up in some way that makes sense to everybody what it is that you're trying to create. And I think it's very important for creative people to figure that out. And you can call it a mission statement, you can call it, kind of your own press release, whatever you want to call it. You have to figure out how to say that in the simplest, terms. And then you have to find a way to pitch it. You have to be able to present that to people, and it doesn't have to be like a formal presentation. You could just sit at a bar with a friend, but you have to be able to, say this in a way where they can understand it and they can, they can see the vision of whatever that is that you're trying to create. So I think those are two important things before you set out and create whatever it is that you want to create. figure out how to say it, both on paper and verbally.
And what did you do when you're in advertising, and how did you really hone that skill? Because you're very skilled at it now. What did you do to kind of perfect and really increase that skill?
One of your most important jobs as a creative in advertising is writing taglines, right? So you got to write a tagline. What's the just do it is probably the most famous one. I think we could all understand. That totally you totally get the brand of Nike with those 3 words, right? I think that's a big part. Is how do you figure out how to say what it is that you want to say in the shortest amount of terms, and then I think the rest of it is just now holding that up as like your beacon, as like your guidepost of how to everything you do has to fall under this now brand. For me, and I put this in just no one really has to know your mission statement or your brand, your tagline really, other than you. And for me, my one word to myself was ridiculous. That was the brand that I wanted to put out there. Everything, I look at the world like, this is just ridiculous. Everything, social media, just the way I see the world, and I think that comes from a lot of just dealing with life from a perspective of comedy. And so ridiculous became my term. So, if you were to look back at all my work, I think I may not have said it out loud, but I think you would see it all falls under that word.
Definitely. And in your career, you've seen a lot of ridiculousness as well with politics, sports, pop culture, the emergence of, social media. You've seen a lot in your career as well that you have a lot of material to work with.
Well, and I think that's it, is try to, kind of be aware of the world you live in. And for me, I look at it as a lot of my work as a mirror about it, looking at it. And so my friend Kathy actually put it where she says your work is like a funhouse mirror as opposed to like a regular mirror. It's like the funhouse mirror version of our culture.
Yeah,
I like that, and I think that's it's almost like it's also therapy, to be honest. Like I look at I look at what's going on in the world. I look at our government or whatever's happened on planet Earth like the night before, and I try to figure out a way to say that is insightful and hopefully makes you have a bit of a laugh at the same time.
Yes.
And try not to be too heavy about it unless it really has to be heavy, and then I try not to be too heavy-handed about it. But I think it's important to be aware, and I think it's important to then find a way to be, it kind of makes you current, and it makes you feel like you're still part of an overall culture, even though you're standing over there and pointing at everyone and laughing.
So when you describe that, it brings up 2 of your paintings that I saw that really caught my eye. Many of them caught my eye. But the one where you have a picture of a guy who's just looked up from his phone, and he put, these are the 13, these are people you miss while you were looking at your phone. I love that one. So you could kind of tell us your thought process for that one. And then the second one is when Prince died, you waited until it was 7 days, 13 hours exactly, and then you released a special tribute to him.
Right.
Much respect. So I really like that. How did you come up with those concepts? Because that's great. So I'm just curious.
I mean, everything is personal. So I actually found myself on the first one. I found myself walking around like a lot of people, and you're just like the zombie looking at your phone. And because again in Venice near Abbot Kinney, there's a lot of foot traffic, and I see a lot of people I'm walking by. And one day I just looked down. Or I look up and I realized I had walked by 10 people, and I'm like, did you even notice those 10 people? Did you even see what they look like? And if they were, are you even aware? And it kind of became a bigger thing for me. And I just said, just for fun to myself, let's walk around Venice without your phone. And as like most things, you start to notice all these amazing things, people and places and the lighting on buildings and how the palm trees are blowing in the wind. You're like, this place is amazing. So that was really, it was a very personal lesson to myself that I think a lot of people can relate to. So I think, a lot of my paintings are me talking to me and giving myself kind of a reminder of how to live. And the Prince one, I mean, I'm a huge Prince fan, and I remember reading how when Sinead O'Connor covered or did her version of that song that he wrote, I think it was 7 hours and 15 days. And then I was going to do a painting about that. And as the date was getting closer, I remember hearing DJs on the radio or whatever saying how they're going to play a special tribute to Prince exactly at that time. And it was 13 days. And I go, 13 days? Wait a minute. And I went online and looked it up, and sure enough, Prince's version was 13 days. And I wanted to hit actually the 7th hour. I forget exactly when it was, but I wanted to hit exactly that mark because I knew certain DJs, especially in LA, who were talking about it a lot, were going to start doing like a whole block of Prince. So I'm like, I want to do it at that moment. I want to put it on social media at that moment.
Right.
And I did one, and then suddenly, I had a lot of people calling me, go, I want one. So then I made about 20 or 30 of those, and they're all hand done.
Yes.
And it's not a stencil where I can just like repeat it. It was like all hand painted. So I would like trace over the last one, but it's all, brushed wash. And I remember at first I'm like, to be in the mood and to be in the spirit and to honor Prince, I will only play Prince while I paint this. So, no one would ever know that, but it was important to me. So I played Prince for like, I think 2 or 3 weeks when I painted all those pieces.
Great.
So for me, the tribute went, that long while making those
I
paintings.
love it. That song that was referenced is Nothing Compares to You, and Sinead O'Connor redid it. So I have a bunch of favorite Prince songs. My top 2 are If I Was Your Girlfriend and 17 Days.
Yeah.
What are some of yours?
Well, I had another painting that I did on a clock, which sold a while ago, and it said, instead of asking how much of your time is left, ask how much of your mind, baby. You know that?
Oh, okay, yeah.
The opening to
we'll have to look that song up, but yeah, I'll think of it. But I know the lyric, though. I recognize the lyric.
So I did that, and then I did another one where it was on one of those things that you measure your foot size on. What do you call those scale things that you see at the
shoe store?
The shoe store. Ooh. And it said, act your age, mama. And it was painted on that.
Yeah.
So, I try to do a lot of conceptual
good.
pieces around music, and Prince obviously being one of my favorites, so I have a bunch of those on from his words.
One of my favorites as well, so respect. When was it, and I'm really curious to hear you answer this question because you've been around for a little while and you've had significant successes. When was the turning point of your career in terms of when did you realize, okay, this is going to work, I'm going to be a full-time, full-fledged artist, and it's go time?
So it's funny because I've never really thought I was going to go down one path. The reason I even went to Art Center was because when I went to Art Center, and I wanted to go into art. I didn't know what to do. My mom obviously was okay with that school, so I went to go see the counselor, and she goes, "What kind of art do you want to make?" And I go, "I don't know. What do you got?" And she goes, "Well, we have film, we have photography, we have design, we have painting, all of that. I want to do all of that." And she goes, "Well, go on advertising, because advertising will give you a taste of all of it in some way, and more importantly, you'll learn again how to pitch and how to come up with ideas." So for me, to answer your question, like the pivotal moment was I was on a shoot with a friend of mine. I think I was like 3 years into advertising at this point, and my friend asked the director, "Hey, what would it take right now for me to leave my copywriting job and go be a director?" And the director just said, "Oh, it's simple. If you want, there's really good film programs. There's one at UCLA. There's one at NYU. You go take a workshop. You come out of the class and you learn how to load a camera." This is back when you were shooting on a 16 millimeter film. So he's like, you learn how to load and shoot your own, work your own camera. You go out and make your own film. That's it, and the rest you just learn by doing it. And I remember leaving that shoot shaking, and my friend's like, "What's wrong?" And I go, "I don't know what happened, but you asked a question that I just have been meaning to ask, and it wasn't necessarily about directing. It was about just living a life of making art." And it just seemed so easy. All I had to do was just leave my job and start doing it. It was really like what he was saying. And I was 25, and my friend's advice was very smart. He said, "Listen, if you're going to do this, think about it. Don't tell anybody this for 7 days. 7 days, just let this really, really sink in that you really want to make this, drastic departure." Because my career was just starting. I was, 3 years in advertising. You're just getting going. and now you want to quit. So, but I did. I waited 7 days. And on the 7th day, I came in and I quit my job.
Wow.
And then I was living in Richmond, Virginia, and I moved to New York. I took his advice. I went to an NYU summer film workshop. I was making a salary, and then suddenly I was sleeping on a friend's futon in the middle of summer in New York, and I had enough money to eat like a piece of pizza a day.
Okay.
And I'm like, I love this. I was 25 too. You're 25.
Right.
You can do anything.
In New York City.
In New York City. But I had friends, and I ended up getting some freelance work after eventually. But I was a full-time student in this workshop for like I think 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And you just did that every day. But I made a short film, and it got me going, and I suddenly felt like I can do anything.
Right. And then speaking of film, I know that you're also a music video director. You work with like Sean Kingston, Colby Calais, Poison. How did that develop from your career?
So eventually I got into animation, and I've had this idea for a long time about making a short film where I took famous album covers and had them all fight each other. So I had this company who was interested in doing a charity concert. It was basically it was called Battle of the Ad Bands, and it was all these advertising agency bands who basically play on a stage, and all the money goes to whatever charity. And they hired me and my buddy to make a opening film for this concert. So I had this idea, told them the idea. They go, great, here's some money, go make that. And we spent about 3 months making this short film. The short film came out. It screened at the concert. It got a lot of positive reviews. And then it went on YouTube, which was like 2007. So it was like
early YouTube.
Early YouTube. And it just went everywhere. It just went viral. And it got mentioned in Rolling Stone. It got mentioned in Entertainment Weekly. Tons of other magazines and blogs and places that got it. And then a buddy of mine who was, trying to get me music video work got it to Poison.
Got it.
And Poison saw the video. Brett Michaels and Bobby Dahl and I got on a conference call. And nice. I was nervous. I was so nervous. I was like, Brett Michaels is going to be on a call?
Yes.
So then we talked to him, and they were doing a covers album. They did 2 covers that I did me and my buddy did videos for. Me and my friend Abe, we had a little directing duo called Ugly Pictures in New York. And we did 2 videos for them. One was a cover of their song of What I Like About You, which is a romantic song. And they did a cover of Justin Timberlake's Sexy Back. And we did 2 videos for those 2 songs. And the band flew to New York, and we shot them in a studio that I was working out of called Curious Pictures. And that was it. That was the start. I'm like, oh man, I really want to. And I grew up on MTV, so the idea of doing music videos was always that like dream of mine as well. So I'm like, oh, I get to now make music videos. And I got to say, I like Poison and all that, but I wasn't the biggest Poison fan. My brother was a bigger Poison fan.
Okay.
So he was like, Poison?
Cool. And then you did Colby Calais, Sean Kingston. Excellent.
Yeah. It's been fun.
Why do you love what you do?
The main thing that I get excited about is I have no idea how to do that. That really is what gets me going. Even the music videos, there's, each one is very specifically written for that song, and some are hand-drawn animation, some are stop motion, some are live action. It really depends on what the song inspires, right? So, and I don't know, and I don't know if I necessarily. I think my style, if I was to say this, it just comes from my kind of point of view of how I see things. But one day I'll be doing a live action thing, and it's kind of maybe somewhat slick and looking polished, and the next day I'll do a very raw looking stop motion film, and they both appeal to different parts of me, and I think that's the thing that gets me the most. That's the thing I love the most, is I have no idea what I'm going to make tomorrow, and I like that, because I like. I think I would be bored if I did the same type of thing over and over and over again, and that's what I think it makes me the most excited every morning when I want to make something today.
Cool. And then on the flip side, what scares you?
Well, the part that I think is the hardest thing that I think everyone deals with is just the financial part, because it's really easy to be excited and to go make things all the time. The hard part is then to look at it as a as a job,
Right.
and as a career. And so, there's many a time when, I'm just sitting there with like, knowing I haven't sold a painting in a while, or I haven't got an illustration job, or any kind of freelance work in a while, and that's what scares me the most, is that. On the upside, I think now more than ever, I have an amazing amount of people around me who are very supportive and just are cheerleaders in every way. And so even though things are, they seem grim for a little while, I think a nice positive text from someone saying, "Hey, I love your painting," makes me kind of feel like I can get up and do it again tomorrow.
Goes a long way. You've mentioned that a few times. How have you been able to surround yourself with people that are supportive and really pump you up and get you through the tough times? Because that's tough, being a creative, being an entrepreneur, and responsible for all your income. There's lots of low times. How have you been able to acquire and develop a really strong tribe?
I think a lot of it comes from advertising. I think the community around advertising, the creatives, that I worked with, all of them have they all have another part of them, another artistic side to them that they do, besides just doing advertising work. And so I think that's just part of the, the tribe I come from. And so I think we're all supportive of each other, whether you want to be a photographer or a filmmaker or whatever. It's like, yeah, man, go make your thing. Let me see let me see if I can help you. Whether I can help you by physically, being on set with you and being part of it, or I can help you, a little bit financially, or I can help you just, connect with people who want to make stuff like you do. Whatever that is. So I think there's a good network. And then I think the other part is just, I think people hopefully, when they see that you are not giving up, they're not going to give up on you.
Yes, agreed. What advice would you have to other maybe younger creatives who are going through what you have been through in the past, in terms of just not knowing where your next job's coming from, not knowing when your next paycheck is going to come? What would you advise for them to do to not give up, basically?
I think part of making art, and it's a broad term, but whatever your art is, the part of making art. There's art in making art. So like and I think a lot of the art of making art is problem solving. How do you solve this problem? So like if you don't have a place to work, find a place where you can go, that you can sit quietly for whatever amount of time. It's funny, like there was a time when I was traveling a lot on shoots, on advertising, but I was trying to write my first screenplay. And I would go to the airport early, just so I can have quiet time to write, and I would take flights that had like a layover, just so I could have more time to write.
Right.
Because I'm like, I had no other time to do this. So it was, I found a way to kind of solve that problem in my way, and I think that's the advice I would give to anybody: is find creative solutions to get you to create that allows you to create.
Got it. Yeah. Good. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
I have so many failures. There's been a lot of things that just, you spend a lot of, so recently, like a year ago recently, I spent a lot of time trying to write a new story, like a new fictional kind of children's story. And I really thought people were going to love this, and it was. Right. And I spent, I did illustrations for it. I wrote out an entire outline. I started rereading screenplay books again, just so I can kind of get my head back into story arc and act breaks and all that stuff. And nobody liked it. Nobody thought it was good. And friends who were nice, but they were like, "This isn't good. Like this isn't very good." And I think that. And that was months and months and months of working on that thing. But what came out of it was, now suddenly I'm like, well, the story itself doesn't work, but this piece is pretty good. And that piece, suddenly you put that into kind of like a bowl of water, and suddenly it'll grow into something else. And it's actually now grown into another story, which I think is much better, and I think it's much more me, I would say, actually, because I can do a lot more with it, humor-wise and drawing-wise. So. But I think that's constant. I think every year, I would say I've got a handful of those that happen to me, where I just spend all this time. I'm sure this is this great, amazing thing, whether it's a story, a painting, whatever, and it just falls completely flat. Yeah. And, just get up tomorrow and make another one.
Yeah, because you have the animated pilot, Rancho Cucamonga. We're still waiting to kind of see where that's going to end up.
Yeah, that's been that. So that even before it got to Fox, which eventually made the pilot, it was probably about 10 years of working on that thing. Yeah, working on it and writing it as a screenplay, and then rewriting it as a TV show. And then eventually, my writing partner, Peter, who I work with still on the books and everything, he was the one who said, what if you made it an animated TV show? And I go, that's amazing. That's a great idea. And suddenly it took on a whole other life. And then it's a whole other journey of trying to make an animated TV show. And then we put the whole pitch book together and just shopped it around. And then eventually Curious Pictures, who I was working with at the time, brought it to a man named Andrew Singer. And I really didn't know who Andrew Singer was. And we went to Broadway Video, and we had this meeting. And all along the room, there's like posters of like 30 Rock and a bunch of other shows. And I'm like, wait a minute. I know these shows. And then I realized that he worked for Lorne Michaels. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be great. And then, there's a whole other journey of trying to get that. But, after 2 or 3 years really of that journey, it was finally made. Right. And after all that, they're like, yeah, we're not going to pick it up. And so, I don't know if I don't know. Like your heart can only take so many things, but over time, you're a little resilient. You're like, all right, I'll go make another thing, and you just go make another thing, and and it'll fall into its own place when it wants to. And I don't think we did anything wrong. I think we made an amazing pilot. We had an amazing cast. We had Russell Peters. We had Mark Hamill. Lorne Michael, he was the one who basically brought it to Fox. We had great showrunners, great writers. It was done by I forget the director's name, who does Futurama. I met Matt Groening in the process.
Okay. Yeah, Simpsons.
I think we did it the best way we could.
Yeah.
And I think we were true to the story that we wanted to make, that I think Fox wanted to make, that I think we wanted to make. And it didn't work. But that's what are you going to do? You write it, you put it out, you create it, and then sometimes it sits on a hard drive or in a drawer and collects dust. And
then 7 years from now, they're like, "Oh, we have this buried treasure.
Right. Yeah,
here, let's get it going."
So anybody at Fox out there listening to this, probably on your hard drive under R, you can find the Rancho Cucamonga pilot.
Yes, let's get that on the TV quickly, ASAP. Yeah. Speaking of children's books, talk to us about how you developed the idea for your really successful children's book, Herbert's Wormhole.
So this is a crazy story. So we, Peter and I started working together, and we actually just recently discussed this, and I don't think the origin story, we both agree on the origin story, but the way I remember it is that he just had his first son, and he's got 2 kids now. So he had his first son, and he was telling his son this kind of bedtime story. And it was based on his son having a play date that I don't think worked out very well. And I think the original title was called Playdate 2109. And it was, as far as I remember, it was a play off the Star Trek line of Stardate.
Okay.
So Playdate 2109 was the original title. And then we started writing a story about these 2 kids who have they're not very good friends. They're kind of forced play dates together, and they kind of have this adventure where they end up going through their jungle gym slide, opens up to a portal to the future. Like Peter, that's an amazing premise, an amazing idea. And then we just started developing that and working on it. And we thought it'd be a cool animated TV show.
Right.
And we pitched it, went to Disney, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network. Everyone thought it was okay, but it didn't really work. And then got a meeting with a wonderful person named Brenda Bowen, who I'm still working with, thank God. And she had her own press, her own division at HarperCollins. And I had a meeting with her, showed her the TV pitch book, and she goes, "This could be a book." And actually, Peter wasn't even there. It was because it was in New York. I was sitting there, and I go, "How is this a book?" And she's like, "I'll help you. We'll figure this out." And she saw something in it that we didn't see. And she goes, "Go write a few chapters. We'll go do some drawings, and let's see if we can pitch this."
Nice.
And we did, and we got it made. And just before it was about to go to press, I think, and her division at HarperCollins collapsed, and she was no longer there.
Oh.
And I'm like, what happens now?
No.
And luckily, another person named Jordan, who we're still working with too, on the last book series, he came in, picked it up, took it over, and came out, and it did really well. And we got a stamp of approval from J.K. Rowling.
Yes.
On the book.
That's
and
dope.
That helped us tremendously. And suddenly we had a book that was on shelves that, we had, really nice people say really nice things about.
Great story. How do you handle your critics? Because I'm sure with your success comes with lots of haters and critics. How do you handle the critics?
I think it was Andy Warhol who said, while everyone's trying to figure out what to do with the piece you just made, work on the next one. And I think about that a lot. If you're working on the next thing, you've already separated yourself from the last thing. And so if people go, I think that sucks, you're like, okay, but I'm working on this thing, and you may not think it sucks. And honestly, in the end, over time, and I think time gives you confidence, hopefully. You don't care. You really don't care. I didn't make it for you. I made it for me. This is me talking to me most of the time. I'm making fun of myself. I'm the guy who always say, please pretend I'm your phone and look at me. I'm the guy who says that painting where it says all the people you ignored today because you're too busy looking down at your phone. Like, these are all things that I think about myself. So these, a lot of the work is just, me making myself laugh and, kind of me realizing how I live. The fact that you hopefully like it or, find, some meaning into it, that's great. But really, I'm really making this stuff just for myself.
Yeah. I like how you said time gives you confidence. That's a cool statement there. I agree as well. Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
October, I'll give you exactly, this is exactly the moment, October 2004, I got divorced and I got fired pretty much around the same time for my job at the Sci-Fi Channel. And so I remember waking up the next day, and I don't know where it came from, but I said to myself, there's freedom in failure. And I thought, I can let this collapse me, or I can just, grow wings from this. And I had a 3-month severance package from the job, from Sci-Fi. And I called up my friend Abe, who he and I did the directing team of Ugly Pictures. I called up Abe and I said, look, I've got 3 months. Let's just make a film. So we made a stop motion film with that time, and I didn't wallow too much in this place that I could have been in. There was definitely moments where I was just like, what is my life come to, and how did I get here, and where is this going to go? But at the same time, I had a really good distraction of making, and that's the thing about art in general, like, what a great distraction. No matter what's happening in your life, no matter where you are in the world, and friends, family, jobs, like just all the highs and lows, like, you can go into the world of just making something, and it all goes away. For a while, it all goes away, and time doesn't mean anything. You're not really on Earth for that little duration. So I think that's the thing that I got out of this experience. And that short film launched our careers. We got into the New Director Showcase that summer at Cannes. Yes. And all of a sudden, me and Abe, the both of us saw this in ourselves. They're like, oh, we can do this. And other people as well go, oh, you can do that. And then suddenly we started getting work. And it really snowballed into just this whole career that kind of came out of it. But most importantly, it just helped me get through that period because I wasn't focused on what just happened. I was focusing on what is happening.
Nice. Great. I'm going to ask you, who was the most influential person for you growing up? And while you answer, I'm going to take some quick videos of this studio while we're talking for Instagram stories. But yeah, who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Well, it's easy to say my dad because there's a lot of things that I've learned from him. The main thing is, I think, especially growing up, my dad had a really good sense of humor. He had a really great way of seeing things and making light of whatever's going on in the world, in the family, and whatever was happening. And he also gave me he's got this confidence about him that I think is just, he'll talk to anybody. Like you'll be in line at the grocery store and he'll talk to the person, in front of him, behind him. And, he just has a very kind of social manner about him. And I thought, that's an important thing. As you go out into the world and as you go and try to make whatever career and, brand for yourself, I think it's kind of important to try to be a likable person, because likable people tend to, I think live probably longer, and I think people want to work with you. I think people want to be around you, and I think it helps you get going. So I think I learned that from my dad. Both those things: the sense of humor and just being a nice person.
Cool. All right. And then when you were 21 years old, were you here in California or were you in New York City?
I was stumbling through the streets of Pasadena during my art center days.
So if we're going to go back and visit 21-year-old you, and we're going to give him some advice, what advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
Oh, this is great. Okay, so, and I heard this recently. I think Spielberg said this in so many words, and I think this is kind of something that I realized was happening to me. So when I was 21, I basically graduated art center. I think I was 21. I think I just turned 21. And so, and I remember then, and weirdly also back to that really dark period of my life when so I had this full-time job and at Sci-Fi I didn't like, and the marriage obviously was falling apart. And I remember even then, there was this voice inside of my head that I called the 4 a.m. voice. And that same voice was there when I was 21, which was basically giving me the ideas, all the things that I wanted to make, all the things I wanted to do with my life: tell stories, write books, write screenplays, make whatever. And I didn't listen to that voice for a long time, even when I was 21, because I was at art center, I was graduating, in advertising, I was getting a job. But even then, that voice was like, yeah, but weren't we going to make a story? Weren't we going to make a book? Remember we talked about that thing about a comic book or a movie and I'm like, yeah, shut up. I have to go make ads now. I got to go do this thing. And you can only ignore that voice for so long. And I think my advice to myself then would be, listen to that voice. Listen. I mean, and the scary part, which I think people have realized, is that if you don't listen to that voice, it'll go away. Right. And then what?
Yeah. Good answer. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
That being, that having your own, your point of view, your perspective on things is what makes you unique. And, so many times people want to put you in these boxes of whatever that is, whatever you're trying to create, especially, they put you in these, categories. And I think, oh man, don't fall into that, and do not, the whole reason why you're different is because you have a perspective on the world that hopefully the next person next to you doesn't. I guess, and more importantly, you have a style to execute that perspective that the next person doesn't. So I think you got to really stay true to that. And what was your question?
Yeah, that was it. Okay. What is the one lesson in life you took the longest to learn? You told us a great lesson. Yeah, stay true. Don't let anyone put you in a box.
Yeah, exactly. Avoid those boxes.
There you go. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence would be, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
Make your shit. That's
there
it.
You go. Boom.
Just shut up and just make it. Just do the work.
Right, great. And then what is one new habit or 2 or 3 new habit that you've added to your daily routine in the past year or 2 that has been most beneficial?
Resting. And the resting could mean going for a walk. It could mean just closing your eyes. It could be meditating. It could be going to yoga. Just finding that downtime. And I think it's crucial. I mean, I can't tell you how much, and even just like the last project I just worked on, like how physically and emotionally draining it was. And I know if I just took even like, I don't know, 20 minutes a day and just sat still and just quieted my mind and stopped moving my body and just sat there, I think I would have been in much better shape. It took me a long time to recover from just months and months of just going full tilt. And and I think as you get older, you realize you can't do that. You just can't do that. So that's something I really pay attention to, is just stopping.
Yeah, you're preaching to the choir here. We're learning that lesson every day. Now, we're big readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. What is one or more books that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately?
Well, the book I just finished reading is called Sapiens,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
great. And there's so many layers to this book about, how we got to this moment in our society and our culture, and how just, the evolution of mankind and the journey that we've been, and kind of, in some ways explains a lot of what's happening in the world. So that's one book I would say is amazing right now. And there's one book that I go back to often, which I'll also bring up, which is called The Writer's Journey, and I believe it's by Christopher Vogler. And do you know this book?
No, but we'll look it up. So
the reason why it's not just for writers. I mean, it is about writing, and it is about actually I think the story is that he basically took Joseph Campbell's Here with a Thousand Faces and basically broke it down into a very understandable book, or originally a memo that I think he passed around in Hollywood to get screenwriters to basically understand how to basically plot out storylines. But what's great about this book is that if you're a writer or not a writer, it still teaches you about how you're the hero of your own journey, right? Like, you're basically on your journey. And you can look at characters like, all the famous ones that we look at as heroes, the Skywalkers and the Harry Potters and whatever. And you could go, yeah, look at their journey and look at all the people they've met, all the wise men and the shapeshifters and all these people that they've had to endure to get to where they had to go. But that's also you today, living your life right now. Like, that's happening all around you. You have wise people around you. You have your own wizards. You have your own shapeshifters around you. So in a way, it just kind of, it reminds you that you're on your own journey, and it's important to look at it, I think, from that perspective, because I think, it makes it a little easier to know that, this moment you're in, good or bad, won't last. And there's another, thing coming up that you have to get ready for. And you have to find a way to get through it. And really, all you can possibly do is just keep getting up and trying to find a way to, creatively solve this problem right now. I don't just mean in the art form. I mean, like, in your life. Like, how do you solve this problem right now? And do it with, hopefully, with a smile and a bit of grace. And I think you'll be okay.
Great. Tell people how they can find you online.
You can go to Instagram, and it's Rohit913, ROHIT 913, which is my birthday, by the way. And and Rohitash Rao paintsontrash.com is where you can see most of the paintings, and then rohitashrao.com is where you can see some paintings and the music video stuff and the commercial stuff and the rest of whatever I've done.
Okay. September 13th, fellow Virgo in the house.
Yeah.
Huh? All right. September 14th for me. So
really?
Nice.
Oh,
yes.
That's nice.
That's awesome. No wonder we get along so well. We hit it off so easy. Great. Talk to us about your upcoming show at Google.
Oh, okay. So I spent the last number of years working on this idea, which I call Rohit Records. And Rohit Records is a record store for bands that don't exist. And for me, it's a very big idea in the sense where it has so many layers to it that I love all these different layers for different reasons. And the reason why I think the show works is because I get to put them all together in one, show. So basically, I've created fake record albums for fake bands. So at Google, the Google office here in Venice, they've put up 130 fake records that I've made in their office on the wall. And on the end of the month, we're having a party where basically I've put together a bunch of musicians, a company called Jingle Punks, who have created original fake songs by the fake bands, and they're going to be performing live. And so they're basically like the same 4 or 5 people, but they're kind of dressing up in different outfits for each of the 5 bands that they're going to portray. and they're going to play, their one-hit wonder of each of those, songs. And then I directed a music video for one of the songs that we're going to screen. It'll have its world premiere screening at Google while the band plays the song. And the album will, of course, be there. And then eventually the show goes to New York next month, and then comes back to LA and goes into a record store. And as it's building, not only do I have the fake records, but I have now fake concert posters, fake T-shirts, and a bunch of swag that comes with. Imagine walking into a record store and all the things you would see there, but now every single thing that you see is completely been handmade by me.
Dope. So check that out, coming to a city near you. We appreciate that. And so we're come to the end of the show. I just, first, before we let you kind of leave the show with some advice for everyone else, I just want to say thanks for appearing on the show. It's been a pleasure. You came, really highly thought of, and you did not disappoint. So thank you.
Oh, thank
I love your artwork. It's funny. I love the work that you've done. And even as you're talking today, just telling people about your journey and how you went through your ups and downs, like I have the ultimate respect because, when you say that something you created that's maybe popular now, you created 10 years ago, that's the whole point. Like you got to put it out there and then just be patient. So I respect the advice you gave, and we let people, the guests in the show, would just give any last minute words of wisdom and advice. So I'll kind of turn the microphone over to you and you can take us home.
I think everybody out there, whoever is in that place of creating, I think what I always find that comforts me when I'm sitting alone for 10 hours with a paintbrush or whatever in my hand is that you're not alone. Like there's so many people out there doing the exact same thing you are, and you're all in it. We're all in this together. So just if there is and the only way you probably know that is if you see them posted on social media really, or you talk to them. But just know that they're all out there. That what you're going through and the highs and lows of writing your idea or painting your idea or however you're creating your stuff. We're all doing the same thing, and I think we're all bonded because we're trying to make this all happen together at the same time.
Agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon on our next episode.